Picture Sarah, a financial analyst in Manhattan, staring at her laptop screen at 11 p.m., her third cup of coffee growing cold beside a stack of reports that seem to multiply rather than diminish. The market volatility has her clients panicking, her boss demanding answers she doesn't have, and her mind racing with scenarios of failure. 3,000 miles away in Los Angeles, Marcus, a software engineer at a prestigious tech company, sits in his car in the company parking lot, unable to bring himself to walk into another day of feeling like a fraud. Convinced that today will be the day everyone discovers he doesn't belong. Meanwhile, in Chicago, Dr. Elena Rodriguez finishes her 14th hour in the emergency room, her hands still trembling from the intensity of back-to-back trauma cases, wondering how much longer she can carry the weight of others' pain without breaking under the pressure herself. These scenarios aren't fictional, they're the daily reality for millions of Americans living in our major cities, fighting battles that rage not on distant shores, but within the confines of their own minds. The battles against doubt that whispers you're not good enough, fear that paralyzes decision-making, frustration that builds with each obstacle, and sometimes even despair that makes tomorrow feel impossible to face. Life throws challenges at us with ruthless unpredictability, market crashes, job losses, health crises, relationship breakdowns, social pressures, and how we respond to these challenges doesn't just influence our day. It defines the entire trajectory of our lives. But what if I told you that over 2,000 years ago, a group of philosophers developed a mental framework so robust, so practically applicable that it could transform your relationship with every challenge you face? What if you could develop a mindset so unshakable, so resilient, that no obstacle could truly stand in your way, not because you'd never face difficulties, but because you'd have the tools to transform every difficulty into a stepping stone toward becoming the person you're meant to be? This is the promise of Stoicism, and it's not some abstract ancient philosophy gathering dust in university libraries. The Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, who ruled the Roman Empire while facing plagues and wars, Epictetus, who rose from slavery to become one of history's greatest teachers, and Seneca, who navigated the treacherous waters of Roman politics while building lasting wisdom. These weren't armchair philosophers. They were people who faced real challenges, real pressures, real adversities, and they developed practical tools for not just surviving but thriving through it all. Marcus Aurelius, writing in his personal journal that would later become Meditations, captured this perfectly. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. This isn't about positive thinking or pretending problems don't exist. This is about building mental armor grounded in the unbreakable principles of wisdom, courage, justice, and self-control, a mindset that can overcome anything because it's rooted in what you can actually control rather than what you cannot. Today, we're going to explore how these ancient insights can become your modern toolkit for building a mental fortress. If you've ever felt like life is pulling you down, if you're seeking to build resilience that can withstand any storm, then what follows will provide you with a blueprint for transforming not just how you think, but how you live. By supporting Stoic Vivu and engaging with this content, you're joining a community committed to practical wisdom and meaningful growth. 1. Transforming your perception of challenges. When David Chun received the email that his startup had lost its biggest client, representing 60% of their revenue, his first instinct was panic. Sitting in his cramped San Francisco office, watching his team's faces drain of color as the news spread, he felt the familiar grip of fear tightening around his chest. But David had been studying Stoic philosophy for 2 years, and in that moment of crisis, he remembered Marcus Aurelius's revolutionary insight. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Instead of spiraling into despair, David called an emergency meeting and asked his team a single question. What can this teach us about building a more resilient business? This is the fundamental shift that separates those who are crushed by challenges from those who are forged stronger by them. The Stoics understood that every challenge you face is an opportunity to test and develop your virtues. Whether it's patience when you're stuck in gridlock traffic on the 405 in Los Angeles, resilience when dealing with the loss of a loved one, or courage when facing your deepest fears about career change. The Stoics believe that it's not what happens to you, but how you respond that determines your character and your destiny. Epictetus, who knew something about overcoming obstacles having risen from slavery to become one of Rome's greatest teachers, put it this way: it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. This isn't mere philosophical abstraction. It's a practical framework for transforming obstacles into stepping stones on the path to self-mastery. Every traffic jam becomes an opportunity to practice patience. Every difficult conversation becomes a chance to develop courage. Every setback becomes a laboratory for building resilience. Consider Maria Rodriguez, a Chicago public school teacher who discovered that her school's funding had been cut by 40%. Instead of accepting defeat, she applied Stoic principles by asking herself, what aspects of this situation can I control? She couldn't control the budget cuts, but she could control her response. Maria organized community fundraisers, reached out to local businesses for support, and collaborated with other teachers to share resources. Within 6 months, her classroom was better equipped than before the cuts, and she had built stronger community connections that would benefit her students for years to come. The key to embracing challenges lies in what the Stoics called the discipline of perception. Instead of viewing difficulties as impediments to your happiness or success, you must train yourself to see them as instruments for personal development. When something goes wrong, the Stoic asks not why me, but what can this teach me? This shift in perspective isn't about finding silver linings or engaging in toxic positivity. It's about forging a robust character that thrives under pressure. Seneca, who faced exile, political persecution, and eventually death by suicide on Nero's orders, understood this deeply. He wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." The challenges that seem to end one chapter of your life are actually the opening pages of your next chapter, if you have the wisdom to read them correctly. This approach requires what the Stoics called present moment engagement. Not detachment or indifference, but active participation with whatever life throws your way. When James Patterson, a Denver construction worker, was injured on the job and told he might never work in construction again, he didn't retreat into bitterness. Instead, he used his recovery time to study project management, eventually starting his own construction consulting firm that now employs 12 people. His injury became the catalyst for a career transformation he never would have pursued otherwise. The Stoic approach doesn't promise an easy life. Instead, it offers something far more valuable, a meaningful one. Marcus Aurelius, writing while managing an empire under siege, reminded himself, "Confine yourself to the present and examine just this. What is it about this situation that you cannot bear? You will be embarrassed to answer." Most of our suffering comes not from the challenge itself, but from our resistance to it, our stories about what it means, our fears about what might happen next. By consistently applying these principles, you develop what the Stoics called the discipline of desire, The ability to want what happens rather than demanding that what you want should happen. This doesn't mean becoming passive or accepting injustice. It means recognizing that your power lies not in controlling external events, but in controlling your response to them. Every challenge becomes a chance to demonstrate virtue and build resilience. The traffic jam becomes a meditation on patience. The difficult colleague becomes your teacher in interpersonal wisdom. The financial setback becomes your education in resourcefulness and adaptability. As Epictetus taught his students, difficulties are things that show a person what they are. Remember, the goal isn't to eliminate challenges from your life. That's impossible and would actually weaken you. The goal is to transform your relationship with challenges so that each one makes you stronger, wiser, and more capable of serving others. This is how you build an unshakable mindset, not by avoiding the storms, but by learning to dance in the rain. 2. The true currency of life, ideas over material wealth. In the gleaming towers of Manhattan's financial district, Rebecca Martinez earned more in bonuses last year than most Americans make in a decade. Yet sitting in her corner office overlooking the Hudson River, she felt an emptiness that no amount of money seemed to fill. Meanwhile, across the country in a modest classroom in East Los Angeles, Miguel Santos, a high school history teacher earning a fraction of Rebecca's salary, was experiencing something she had never felt. The profound satisfaction of watching his students' eyes light up as they grasped how the lessons of the past could guide their futures. Miguel had discovered what the Stoics knew over 2 millennia ago. True wealth comes not from external possessions, but from the richness of our ideas and the strength of our character. Seneca, one of Rome's wealthiest citizens who eventually chose philosophy over fortune, captured this wisdom perfectly. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor. This isn't an argument against financial success or material comfort. Both Seneca and Marcus Aurelius lived lives of considerable material wealth. Rather, it's a recognition that when we make the accumulation of things our primary goal, we miss the deeper currency that actually creates lasting value and genuine fulfillment. Consider the most influential figures throughout American history. Was it their bank accounts that changed the world, or their ideas? Frederick Douglass transformed a nation's understanding of human dignity not through wealth, but through the power of his words and ideas about freedom. Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech continues to inspire generations not because of any material possessions he accumulated, but because of the transformative vision he articulated. Steve Jobs revolutionized how we interact with technology not primarily through his wealth, but through his innovative ideas about design and user experience. Marcus Aurelius, writing in his Meditations, reflected, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." This emperor, who had access to unlimited material wealth, understood that the real treasure lay in developing robust, transformative ideas that could endure and truly impact the world. The philosophical insights he recorded in his personal journal have influenced millions of readers across 20 centuries, a legacy far more valuable than any material fortune. Take Sarah Kim, a software engineer in Seattle who left her 6-figure job at a major tech company to develop educational apps for underprivileged children. Her former colleagues thought she was crazy to abandon such financial security, but Sarah had embraced the Stoic understanding that creativity and critical thinking matter more than mere consumption. "I realized I was accumulating stock options and designer gadgets," she explains, "but I wasn't developing insights that would last or truly help others." Her educational apps now serve over 100,000 students worldwide, an impact no salary could have provided. This shift from accumulation to contribution requires what Stoicism calls the discipline of action, asking ourselves whether we're merely collecting things that will fade or developing insights that will endure. Epictetus, who owned virtually nothing material yet influenced countless students, taught, "Wealth consists in not having great possessions, but in having few wants." This doesn't mean embracing poverty, but rather understanding that our aim should be to create and contribute, to think deeply about problems and develop solutions that serve more than just ourselves. The Stoic approach to wealth involves recognizing money and resources as tools that can be used wisely but should never become the end goal. When James Chin started his small business in Chicago, he could have focused solely on maximizing profits. Instead, he applied Stoic principles by asking, how can this business contribute to my community while providing for my family? His company now employs 30 local residents and has revitalized an entire neighborhood block, outcomes that bring him far more satisfaction than his profit margins ever could. Moreover, embracing ideas over wealth means understanding that personal growth and societal contribution are far more rewarding than material success alone. Seneca wrote, "As each day arises, welcome it as the very best day of all, and make it your own possession." We must seize what flees. Each day offers opportunities to develop new insights, solve meaningful problems, and contribute to something larger than ourselves, opportunities that money cannot buy but ideas can create. This perspective transforms how we approach our careers, relationships, and daily choices. Instead of asking, "How much can I earn?" we learn to ask, "What can I contribute?" Instead of measuring success by our possessions, we measure it by our impact. Instead of competing for scarce material resources, we collaborate to create abundant intellectual and spiritual wealth. In our increasingly materialistic world, the Stoic focus on ideas over wealth offers a refreshing alternative. It challenges us to become thinkers, innovators, and philosophers in our own right, to build legacies of wisdom rather than just accumulations of stuff. As Marcus Aurelius reminds us, what we do now echoes in eternity. The ideas we develop, the problems we solve, and the wisdom we share create ripples that extend far beyond our lifetimes, enriching not just our own lives but the lives of countless others who will benefit from our contributions. 3. Forging your authentic path in a conformist world. At 35, Jennifer Walsh had everything that society told her she should want: a prestigious partnership at a Boston law firm, a six-figure salary, a downtown condo, and the respect of her peers. Yet every morning, she found herself staring at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, asking the same haunting question: is this really my life, or am I just living someone else's script? The breaking point came during a particularly brutal corporate litigation case when she realized she was spending her days helping wealthy corporations avoid responsibility rather than pursuing the social justice work that had originally inspired her to study law. That evening, she made a decision that shocked everyone who knew her. She would leave her partnership to start a nonprofit legal clinic serving immigrant families. Jennifer's story illustrates what the Stoics understood as one of life's most crucial challenges: the courage to create your own authentic path in a world that constantly pressures you to conform. Epictetus, who knew something about breaking free from others' expectations, having literally broken the chains of slavery, taught, "No one can hurt you without your permission." This includes the subtle but pervasive hurt that comes from living a life that isn't truly yours, a life shaped more by others' expectations than by your own deepest values and convictions. The Stoics teach us that while we cannot control external events, we can absolutely control our reactions and actions, thereby shaping our own destinies through deliberate choices and purposeful living. This isn't about forging a path in defiance of the world, but rather crafting a life that aligns with our deepest values and virtues. Marcus Aurelius, despite being born into the ultimate predetermined path as Roman emperor, wrote, "Confine yourself to the present and examine just this. What is it about this situation that you cannot bear?" Even within the constraints of his imperial duties, he found ways to live authentically according to Stoic principles. Creating your own path begins with what Stoicism calls the discipline of perception, developing deep self-awareness through critical examination of your life. This requires asking yourself challenging questions that cut through social conditioning. Am I following this career path because it genuinely fulfills me, or because it's what's expected of someone with my background? Are my relationships authentic expressions of who I am, or performances designed to meet others' approval? Do my daily choices reflect my actual values or society's definition of success? Consider Marcus Thompson, a Houston oil engineer who spent 15 years climbing the corporate ladder before realizing that his work directly contradicted his growing environmental concerns. The Stoic principle of living according to nature, both external nature and human nature, compelled him to make a radical change. He left his lucrative position to pursue renewable energy consulting, taking a significant pay cut but gaining something priceless: alignment between his work and his values. "I realized I was succeeding at a game I didn't want to play," Marcus reflects. Stoicism taught me that true success means living according to your principles, not society's expectations. The courage required for authentic living cannot be understated. Seneca, who navigated the treacherous political waters of imperial Rome while maintaining his philosophical integrity, wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." Creating your own path requires the courage to make unconventional choices, to step away from the beaten track, and to withstand the uncertainty and criticism that inevitably accompany such decisions. When Lisa Chin left her secure position as a Seattle marketing executive to become a freelance photographer specializing in social justice documentation, her family questioned her sanity. But Stoicism had taught her that her worth was defined by her actions and character, not by external approval or conventional measures of success. This philosophy also emphasizes lifelong learning and adaptation as essential components of authentic living. Marcus Aurelius and Seneca were both proponents of ongoing self-improvement and flexibility, believing that a wise person remains always prepared to adjust their course based on new experiences and insights. This adaptable approach is crucial in our rapidly changing world, encouraging us to remain open and responsive while staying true to our core principles. When the COVID-19 pandemic forced David Rodriguez to close his Denver restaurant, he didn't see it as failure but as an opportunity to pivot toward his true passion, teaching cooking skills to underserved communities through virtual classes. However, creating your own path isn't merely about personal ambition or self-actualization. Stoicism teaches us to look beyond individual desires and consider how our actions affect our communities and the broader world. Epictetus emphasized, "What is not good for the swarm is not good for the bee." By choosing a path that contributes positively to those around us, we fulfill the Stoic ideal of living harmoniously within our community while remaining true to ourselves. This interconnected perspective ensures that authentic living becomes socially responsible living. When we align our personal path with the greater good, we create what the Stoics called sympathia, the recognition that individual flourishing and collective well-being are inseparably connected. Jennifer's legal clinic now serves hundreds of immigrant families annually, proving that authentic living often creates the greatest positive impact. The Stoic path isn't about rebellion for its own sake, but about the courage to live according to your deepest convictions while serving something larger than yourself. 4. Mastering change as life's greatest constant. When Nashville songwriter Emma Rodriguez received the call that the music industry was pivoting almost entirely to streaming platforms, effectively making her traditional songwriting contracts obsolete overnight, she felt the ground shift beneath her feet. For 15 years, she had built her career on a specific model of music creation and distribution, and now everything was changing. Her first instinct was to resist, to fight against this new reality, to mourn the good old days of the music business. But Emma had been studying Stoic philosophy, and she remembered Marcus Aurelius's profound insight: loss is nothing else but change, and change is nature's delight. Instead of viewing this industry transformation as a catastrophe, she began to see it as an invitation to evolve her artistry in ways she had never imagined possible. The Stoics understood that change is not just inevitable, it's the fundamental principle of life itself. Everything that exists, from the smallest microorganism to the largest corporations, must change to survive and thrive. Even things that appear static, like mountains and buildings, are constantly changing at the molecular level. This recognition isn't meant to create anxiety, but to liberate us from the futile struggle against life's most basic law. As Epictetus taught his students, it's impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. The same principle applies to change. We cannot master what we refuse to accept as natural and necessary. The Stoic approach to change is fundamentally grounded in what Epictetus called the dichotomy of control, the practice of clearly differentiating between what we can control and what we cannot. Emma couldn't control how the music industry was evolving, but she could absolutely control her response to that evolution. She could choose to adapt her skills, explore new platforms, and find innovative ways to connect with audiences. Within 2 years, she had built a thriving online community of music students, launched a successful podcast about songwriting, and was earning more than she ever had in traditional publishing deals. This mental framework for handling change reduces anxiety over the uncontrollable while empowering us to act decisively where we can make a difference. Consider Robert Kim, a Detroit automotive engineer who watched his industry undergo massive transformation as electric vehicles began replacing traditional combustion engines. Rather than resisting this change or becoming bitter about the disruption to his career, Robert applied Stoic principles by focusing his energy on what he could control, his own learning and adaptation. He enrolled in courses on electric vehicle technology, networked with professionals in renewable energy, and eventually became a leading consultant helping traditional automakers transition to electric production. Moreover, mastering change requires what Marcus Aurelius described as maintaining internal steadiness despite external fluctuations. The Roman emperor, writing while managing an empire under constant threat from barbarian invasions, plagues, and political upheaval, advised us to be like a rocky promontory against which waves constantly break. It stands firm while the turmoil of the sea falls still around it. This powerful metaphor captures the essence of Stoic resilience, the ability to maintain composure and clarity of judgment no matter how stormy life becomes. This stability doesn't come from rigidity or stubborn resistance to change, but from a deep understanding of and engagement with the natural flow of life. When Sarah Martinez's Atlanta marketing firm lost its 3 biggest clients in a single month due to economic uncertainty, she didn't panic or make desperate decisions. Instead, she applied the Stoic practice of present moment awareness, asking herself, "What does this situation require of me right now?" Rather than catastrophizing about the future or lamenting the past, she focused on immediate, practical steps, reaching out to her network, diversifying her service offerings, and exploring new market opportunities. Within 6 months, her firm was more profitable and resilient than before the crisis. Practically speaking, mastering change involves what Seneca called continual self-assessment and adjustment, an ongoing internal dialogue about how we're responding to daily changes and challenges. This isn't anxious rumination but thoughtful reflection. Am I reacting emotionally to this change, or am I responding thoughtfully? Are my actions in this new situation consistent with my values? What can I learn from this transition that will help me handle future changes more effectively? The Stoic approach views every change, whether perceived as positive or negative, as an opportunity for development and virtue refinement. When Chicago restaurant owner Maria Gonzalez was forced to completely reimagine her business model during the pandemic, she discovered strengths she never knew she possessed. The crisis that could have destroyed her restaurant instead became the catalyst for developing innovative delivery systems, building stronger community connections, and creating a more sustainable business model. Epictetus reminded his students that difficulties are things that show a person what they are. Change, even when it's uncomfortable or unwanted, reveals our capacity for growth, adaptation, and resilience. It strips away our illusions about control and forces us to discover the strength that lies within our ability to respond with wisdom, courage, and grace. The goal isn't to eliminate change from our lives. That's impossible and would actually weaken us. Instead, we learn to dance with change, to find our rhythm within life's constant motion, and to use each transition as an opportunity to become more skilled at the art of living well. 5. Building your unshakable long-term vision. Dr. Amanda Foster stood at the window of her cramped Philadelphia apartment, looking out at the struggling neighborhood where she had just accepted a position as a community health coordinator. Her medical school classmates were beginning lucrative residencies in prestigious hospitals, while she had chosen a path that would pay significantly less and offer far fewer traditional markers of success. But Amanda had spent months developing what the Stoics call a long-term vision, a clear sense of purpose that transcends daily fluctuations and distractions. Her vision wasn't about immediate gratification or external validation. It was about spending the next 20 years transforming healthcare access in underserved communities. As Seneca wisely observed, if you don't know where you are going, any road will take you there. Amanda knew exactly where she was going. The Stoics understood that without a well-defined vision, we become like ships without rudders, tossed about by external events and momentary impulses. Marcus Aurelius, managing the complexities of ruling an empire while maintaining his philosophical practice, wrote, "In the morning when thou risest unwillingly, let this thought be present, I am rising to the work of a human being. What have I to complain of if I am going to do the things for which I exist and for which I was brought into the world?" This wasn't abstract philosophizing. This was a practical framework for maintaining direction and purpose amid the chaos of daily responsibilities. Building an unshakable long-term vision begins with deep reflection on what truly matters to you, what you value most in life, what kind of person you wish to become, and how you can contribute meaningfully to the world around you. This process requires what Stoicism calls the discipline of desire, learning to align your wants with your deepest values rather than chasing whatever seems attractive in the moment. Consider Michael Chin, a San Francisco software engineer who spent 2 years carefully developing his vision of becoming a technology educator who could bridge the digital divide in urban communities. This vision guided every career decision he made, from the side projects he chose to the networking events he attended, until he eventually launched a nonprofit that now teaches coding skills to over 500 low-income students annually. A truly Stoic vision must be resilient, capable of adapting to changing circumstances without losing sight of its overarching purpose. This doesn't mean the vision is vague or flexible to the point of meaninglessness, but rather that it's rooted in principles and values that can manifest in various ways as life evolves. Amanda's vision of transforming healthcare access remained constant even when her specific role changed from community coordinator to policy advocate to eventually founding her own clinic. The core purpose endured while the methods adapted to new opportunities and challenges. Marcus Aurelius emphasized the importance of preparing mentally for both success and setbacks as integral parts of any meaningful journey. This preparation isn't pessimistic but represents what Stoics call realistic optimism, acknowledging that obstacles are natural parts of pursuing any worthwhile goal. When James Rodriguez launched his Minneapolis-based sustainable construction company, he spent months visualizing potential challenges, economic downturns, supply chain disruptions, regulatory changes, and competitive pressures. This mental preparation didn't make him anxious. Instead, it strengthened his resolve and flexibility, enabling him to navigate actual challenges with greater equanimity when they arose. The Stoic approach to long-term vision also emphasizes aligning our aspirations with actions that remain within our control. Epictetus taught that we suffer when we desire things outside our influence, but we flourish when we focus our energy on what we can actually affect. This means setting goals based on our efforts and character development rather than external outcomes we cannot guarantee. Sarah Kim's vision of becoming an influential environmental lawyer wasn't measured by the number of cases she won, something partially outside her control, but by the consistency of her preparation, the integrity of her advocacy, and the quality of her service to environmental causes. Moreover, developing a meaningful long-term vision requires what Seneca called present moment engagement with future purpose. Each daily action should be seen as a building block toward your larger aspirations, imbued with meaning and direction. When David Martinez worked his day job as a Denver accountant while spending evenings building his financial literacy nonprofit, he didn't view this as drudgery to be endured. Instead, each spreadsheet he created at work became practice for the financial education materials he was developing, and each client interaction became an opportunity to understand how people relate to money and financial planning. The true value of a Stoic long-term vision lies not just in achieving specific goals, but in the growth and insights gained throughout the journey. As Marcus Aurelius reminds us, confine yourself to the present and examine just this: what is it about this situation that you cannot bear? A well-crafted vision helps us find meaning and purpose in each moment's challenges, viewing every obstacle as an opportunity to practice virtue and develop character. This approach transforms the pursuit of long-term goals from anxious striving into purposeful living, where the path toward your vision becomes as valuable and meaningful as the destination itself. 6. The daily practice of self-examination and growth. Every evening at 9 p.m., Washington, D.C. policy analyst Jennifer Park closes her laptop, pours herself a cup of tea, and opens a leather-bound journal that has become her most valuable possession. For the next 20 minutes, she engages in what Seneca called the evening review, a systematic examination of the day's events, decisions, and responses. Tonight, she reflects on a heated policy meeting where she lost her temper with a colleague who questioned her research. Why did I react defensively instead of listening to understand his concerns? She writes. How can I respond with more wisdom and patience tomorrow? This isn't self-flagellation or obsessive rumination, it's the deliberate practice of self-examination that the Stoics considered essential for genuine personal growth and character development. Seneca, writing to his friend Lucilius, described his own evening practice: when the light has been removed and my wife has fallen silent, I examine the whole day and go back over what I've done and said, hiding nothing from myself, passing nothing by. For why should I fear any consequence from my mistakes when I'm able to say, watch out that you don't do it again, but now I forgive you? This introspective practice isn't about conventional self-improvement focused on external achievements. It's about cultivating deep understanding of our thoughts, behaviors, and motives, constantly working to align our actions with the virtues of wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. The Stoic approach to self-reflection requires turning inward to examine our responses to the external world, but it does so with a specific purpose. Identifying areas where our perceptions or actions may not align with our ethical standards or desired outcomes. This involves asking ourselves challenging questions that cut beneath surface reactions to understand root causes and motivations. Consider Marcus Rodriguez, a Las Vegas hospitality manager who began practicing daily self-examination after repeatedly finding himself frustrated with his team's performance. Through honest reflection, he discovered that his frustration often stemmed from his own unclear communication rather than his employees' shortcomings. This insight transformed not only his management style but his entire approach to leadership and collaboration. Furthermore, this practice includes what modern psychology would recognize as metacognition, thinking about thinking. Marcus Aurelius demonstrated this beautifully in his Meditations, constantly examining his own mental processes, how much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does, but only to what he does himself. This level of self-awareness allows us to catch ourselves in the moment when we're reacting from emotion rather than responding from wisdom, creating space for more thoughtful choices. The evening review technique serves as what Stoics call daily mental cleanup, ensuring that we remain vigilant and conscious of our progress toward personal goals. Cleveland factory supervisor Robert Kim has practiced this for 3 years, finding that it helps him process workplace conflicts more constructively. Instead of carrying anger or frustration into the next day, I examine what happened, what I could have done differently, and what I learned about myself, he explains. It's like clearing the cache on a computer. It helps me start fresh each morning with a clearer, more focused mind. In terms of personal growth, Stoicism promotes the revolutionary idea that we should strive to be better than we were yesterday rather than better than someone else. This philosophy teaches that comparison with others is not only a distraction but often a source of profound dissatisfaction and misguided effort. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "How much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does, but only to what he does himself." By focusing on our own path and progress, we engage in what psychologists now call mastery orientation, a more constructive and self-affirming process than competitive comparison. This inward focus fosters both self-improvement and self-acceptance, acknowledging that while perfection remains unattainable, continuous improvement is both achievable and deeply fulfilling. Sarah Chin, a Portland graduate student studying environmental science, applies this principle by keeping a weekly reflection journal where she tracks not her grades or achievements relative to classmates, but her own growing understanding of complex ecological systems and her developing capacity to contribute meaningful research to her field. Additionally, Stoicism doesn't shy away from the discomfort that often accompanies genuine growth. The philosophy acknowledges that real development can be challenging and uncomfortable, requiring us to confront truths about ourselves that we might prefer to ignore. However, it also provides reassurance that this discomfort is a natural part of developing virtue and character. Each challenge and every moment of discomfort becomes an opportunity to practice Stoic virtues, to strengthen our resolve, and to enhance our capacity for compassion and understanding both toward ourselves and others. Epictetus taught that difficulties are things that show a person what they are. The daily practice of self-examination helps us recognize these moments of revelation, extracting wisdom from our struggles and mistakes rather than simply enduring them. This transforms personal growth from a destination we're trying to reach into a continuous journey of conscious, deliberate, and ethical living, an ongoing dialogue between our inner selves and the external world that allows us to navigate life as active, ethical participants rather than passive recipients of circumstances. 7. Transforming adversity into your greatest teacher. When Hurricane Katrina devastated New Orleans in 2005, community organizer Denise Williams lost everything: her home, her possessions, and temporarily, her faith in the future. Standing in the wreckage of her neighborhood 3 weeks after the storm, she faced a choice that would define the rest of her life. She could allow this catastrophe to break her spirit, or she could transform it into the foundation for something unprecedented. Denise chose the Stoic path, asking herself not, "Why did this happen to me?" but, "How can I use this experience to serve my community better?" Today, 18 years later, the disaster recovery organization she founded has helped rebuild over 3,000 homes and has become a model for community resilience programs across the Gulf Coast. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy," and Denise's enemy was despair itself. The Stoics understood that every hardship presents an opportunity to practice virtues like patience, endurance, and resilience. But this isn't about seeking out suffering or romanticizing pain. Instead, it's about recognizing that when adversity inevitably appears, and it will, we can respond in ways that align with our principles and enhance our character rather than diminish it. Epictetus, who knew something about overcoming adversity, having risen from slavery to become one of Rome's greatest teachers, put it this way: difficulties are things that show a person what they are. Every setback becomes a chance to discover strengths we didn't know we possessed and to develop capacities we never thought we'd need. Consider James Patterson, a Detroit auto worker who was laid off when his plant closed during the 2008 economic crisis. At 52, with a mortgage and 2 children approaching college age, he could have succumbed to bitterness about an economy that seemed to have abandoned workers like him. Instead, James applied Stoic principles by viewing his unemployment as an opportunity to practice perseverance and develop new skills. He used his severance pay to enroll in a community college program for renewable energy technology, working part-time jobs to support his family while studying. When he graduated 2 years later, he was hired by a wind energy company at a higher salary than his previous job had provided. "Losing that job was the best thing that ever happened to me," James reflects. "It forced me to grow in ways I never would have chosen, but desperately needed." Furthermore, Stoicism doesn't advocate for passive acceptance of all adversity. Instead, it promotes active engagement with life's challenges, constantly asking how we can use difficult situations to our advantage or to benefit others. This involves a fundamental shift in perspective. Instead of viewing ourselves as victims of circumstances, we become students of experience, always seeking the lesson within the struggle. When San Antonio military veteran Maria Rodriguez returned from deployment with PTSD, she initially felt overwhelmed by symptoms that seemed to control her life. But through studying Stoic philosophy and working with a therapist who incorporated these principles, she learned to ask different questions. What is this experience teaching me about resilience? How can my struggle help other veterans facing similar challenges? Maria eventually founded a peer support program that has helped hundreds of veterans transition back to civilian life, transforming her personal battle into a source of healing for her entire community. Self-reflection plays a critical role in this transformation process. Stoics regularly engage in practices such as meditation and journaling to reflect on their experiences with adversity. But this isn't rumination over what went wrong. Instead, it's the systematic extraction of actionable insights that can lead to personal improvement and better outcomes in future challenges. Seneca wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end," reminding us that what appears to be an ending is often the hidden beginning of something better, if we have the wisdom to recognize and cultivate it. This reflective process helps internalize the lessons learned from adversity, ensuring that each challenge faced contributes to deeper understanding and a more resilient self. When Chicago public school teacher Michael Kim was diagnosed with cancer at age 38, he began keeping a daily journal not just to process his fear and uncertainty, but to document insights about what truly mattered in life. "Cancer taught me to distinguish between what's urgent and what's important," he writes. "Most of what I thought was crucial turned out to be just noise. The disease forced me to focus on relationships, meaningful work, and present moment awareness in ways that have made me a better teacher, husband, and father." Moreover, utilizing adversity involves embracing what Stoics call the discipline of ascent, a certain level of detachment from external conditions that allows us to maintain inner tranquility regardless of circumstances. This doesn't mean not caring about outcomes. Rather, it means not being emotionally overwhelmed by them. Marcus Aurelius, writing while managing plague, war, and political upheaval, demonstrated this principle. "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This detachment creates the psychological space necessary to respond to challenges with wisdom rather than react from panic or despair. The ultimate goal of utilizing adversity in a Stoic sense is transforming every challenge into a stepping stone toward greater wisdom and a more virtuous life. This approach encourages us not merely to survive our struggles, but to use them as fuel for our philosophical and personal development, enhancing our ability to live fulfilling and impactful lives. In doing so, we not only better ourselves, but potentially provide a beacon of hope and strength for others facing their own adversities, creating ripples of resilience that extend far beyond our individual experiences. 8. Leading through example and virtue. When Milwaukee High School principal Angela Thompson inherited Lincoln High, a struggling urban school with a 40% graduation rate, chronic absenteeism, and a reputation that made experienced teachers request transfers, she could have relied on traditional authoritarian leadership methods. Instead, she chose to embody the Stoic understanding that true leadership isn't about wielding power over others, but about inspiring those around you through virtue and integrity. Every morning, Angela arrived at school 2 hours early, not to catch students breaking rules, but to greet them personally as they entered the building. She learned every student's name, remembered their struggles and aspirations, and consistently demonstrated the respect and dedication she hoped to see reflected throughout the school community. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What we do now echoes in eternity," and Angela understood that her daily actions would shape not just her school's culture, but potentially the entire trajectory of her students' lives. Stoicism teaches that authentic leaders are those who govern their own lives with wisdom and justice, and whose actions naturally encourage others to do the same. This approach to leadership emphasizes personal character and ethical behavior as the foundation of genuine influence rather than position, authority, or charismatic manipulation. In Stoic thought, leadership begins with what Epictetus called self-mastery, the discipline of managing one's emotions, making decisions based on principle rather than impulse, and consistently choosing the common good over personal gain. Before one can effectively guide others, one must demonstrate command over oneself through the cultivation of virtues like courage, temperance, prudence, and justice. Consider David Martinez, who manages a team of 30 software developers at a Kansas City tech startup. When the company faced a major crisis, a security breach that threatened to destroy client trust and potentially bankrupt the business, David's first instinct was to find someone to blame and protect his own reputation. Instead, he applied Stoic leadership principles by taking full responsibility for the oversight failure, working 18-hour days to implement security improvements, and transparently communicating with both his team and clients about the steps being taken to prevent future breaches. His response didn't just save the company, it created a culture of accountability and excellence that attracted top talent and loyal clients. I realized that my team was watching how I handled crisis, David reflects. They needed to see that leadership means owning problems, not avoiding them. Moreover, Stoicism holds that effective leadership focuses on contributing to the well-being of others and the community as a whole, emphasizing service rather than status. This perspective encourages leaders to ask not, "How can others serve my vision?" but "How can I help others grow and succeed?" When Sacramento small business owner Lisa Chin noticed that several of her employees were struggling with financial literacy, she didn't simply refer them to external resources. Instead, she spent her own time learning about personal finance and began offering voluntary lunch and learn sessions on budgeting, saving, and investing. Within 2 years, 3 of her employees had purchased their first homes, and her company's retention rate increased by 60%. Her influence grew not through authority but through genuine care for her team's long-term success. Communication plays a critical role in Stoic leadership, but it's communication guided by what Seneca called the discipline of action, speaking and listening with the intent to enlighten and improve situations rather than to impress or manipulate. A Stoic leader communicates clearly, honestly, and with genuine desire to understand different perspectives before seeking to be understood. This approach builds trust and loyalty because people recognize authentic concern for their welfare and growth. When Phoenix nonprofit director Robert Kim faced budget cuts that required laying off 20% of his staff, he didn't hide behind corporate speak or blame external factors. Instead, he held individual meetings with every employee, explained the financial realities transparently, helped those being laid off find new positions, and worked with remaining staff to restructure operations in ways that preserved the organization's mission while respecting everyone's dignity. Another essential aspect of Stoic leadership is adaptability, the ability to remain steady and principled in the face of change and uncertainty. Stoic leaders recognize that they cannot control external events but can always control their responses, and this resilience enables them to guide others through crises with calmness and clarity. Marcus Aurelius, managing an empire under constant threat, wrote, "The universe is change, our life is what our thoughts make it." This perspective allows leaders to provide stable anchoring for their teams while remaining flexible enough to adapt strategies as circumstances evolve. Furthermore, Stoic leadership involves lifelong learning and reflection, with leaders committed to continuous personal growth and ethical development. They remain open to feedback, actively seek knowledge that enhances their leadership capabilities, and regularly examine their own actions and motivations. This humility and commitment to improvement creates psychological safety for others to grow and take risks, knowing their leader is also on a journey of development rather than pretending to have all the answers. The ultimate measure of Stoic leadership isn't the leader's personal success or recognition, but the growth and flourishing of those they serve. As Epictetus taught, it's impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. Great leaders create environments where others can discover their own capabilities and develop their own wisdom, multiplying positive impact far beyond what any individual could achieve alone. Reflecting on your Stoic journey forward. As we reach the end of our exploration together, I want you to imagine yourself 1 year from today. Picture the person you could become if you consistently applied even half of what we've discussed. See yourself facing challenges not with anxiety but with curiosity, asking, "What can this teach me?" rather than, "Why is this happening to me?" Envision yourself making decisions based on your deepest values rather than external pressures, creating a life that reflects your authentic self rather than society's expectations. This isn't fantasy, this is the practical promise of Stoic philosophy when applied with dedication and consistency. The journey we've taken today represents more than just philosophical concepts. These are the tools that have guided humanity's greatest leaders for over 2 millennia. Marcus Aurelius used these principles while managing an empire under siege. Epictetus applied them while rising from slavery to become one of history's most influential teachers. Today, people across America are using these same timeless insights to build lives of purpose, resilience, and meaningful contribution. But here's what makes this moment crucial: knowledge without application remains merely intellectual entertainment. Seneca warned against this when he wrote, "As each day arises, welcome it as the very best day of all, and make it your own possession." We must seize what flees. The wisdom we've explored today will only transform your life if you begin implementing it immediately, starting with small, consistent actions that compound over time into profound change. Consider beginning tonight with Seneca's evening review. Spend just 10 minutes reflecting on your day, examining your responses to challenges, and identifying opportunities for growth. Tomorrow morning, practice Marcus Aurelius's discipline of perception by choosing to see one difficult situation as an opportunity rather than an obstacle. These seemingly minor practices, when sustained over months and years, create the kind of character transformation that the Stoics called the good life. Remember that this philosophical journey isn't meant to be traveled alone. The Stoics emphasized community and mutual support in the pursuit of wisdom and virtue. By engaging with content like this, by sharing these insights with others, you multiply your own development while contributing to something larger than yourself. As Marcus Aurelius reminded us, what brings no benefit to the hive can bring none to the bee. This is why I encourage you to subscribe to Stoic Vivu and become part of our growing community of modern Stoics. Every time you like, share, or comment on our content, you're participating in the ancient tradition of philosophical dialogue that has shaped civilization's greatest minds. Your engagement helps us reach others who are seeking practical tools for building resilience, character, and meaningful purpose. The path forward isn't always easy, but it's always worthwhile. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to practice virtue. Every setback becomes a chance to demonstrate resilience. As Epictetus taught, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Your Stoic journey begins now. Subscribe, engage, and let's continue building lives of virtue and resilience together.